All right, there we are. We're live. So welcome, everybody. I'm really excited that tonight we have an event where all of the hosts, sans one of our MIA hosts, are here, and we're ready to talk to you guys about what's been happening on Theory Forge and maybe the past, the present, and the future, as you can see up there. And so tonight, Saga is going to kind of prompt us through all the different topics and give you guys an idea of what we've done and what we're planning on doing.
Oh, hello everybody. How's it going? Good to see that we've got some people hanging out today. Thanks everybody for coming back. First thing, let's do a brief introduction for everybody. I'm Sog. I've been in and around the Landmark community and EverQuest Next community since I found out that these games were really coming. Happy to be a part of this show. Also, haven't been doing much streaming on my own, but do sometimes. We've also got Velix here from 10 Ton Hammer. Say hello.
Yes, hello. You guys are probably familiar with me if you're in the community with EQ Hammer. We've got a lot of changes coming up, so I'm sure you guys have kind of seen some of those on Twitter, but there's going to be some different stuff coming from us and from me also in the future, so I'll know more about that next week. But I am excited to continue on here at the show as normal with Theory Forge, and Sog mentioned that Locke is not here, and he just kind of let us know today that the time change was going to be a little too much. So we're going to be going just us five for now, but we are looking into finding a new host for the show. So we've already got some people in mind. It'll be pretty exciting. So if you guys will be following that. And Nero can...
Yeah. So I've been on every talk show for EverQuest Next and Landmark except for... what's it called so far? Lorgasm, which... Is that back yet, guys?
Yeah, starting Saturdays at 12 p.m.
Well, hell yeah. Nice.
So we're doing it tomorrow, right, Vel? I don't know if we actually confirmed, are we?
Yeah, we can do it tomorrow. I'm
cool.
Totally game.
By the way, the stream broke, guys, so I went to go chat something, and it totally changed the way the screen looks, so give me a second.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys can continue. It's all good.
Sure. So, yeah, you folks, of course, know me from that, and, of course, Castles of Crap Shack, Content Creations, and I yelled Landmark on the Landmark, or the Year of EverQuest stream, rather. So, yeah, I've been around for a while, build a lot of stuff, do a lot of stuff. Y'all know me. So, I guess passing it back around then, Phantom X, did you get a chance to do your introductions?
Not yet.
All right.
I don't
Well,
really
go
have
ahead,
much to
sir.
say. Got off from work, so hopefully we'll be doing a lot more with Nexus, a lot more personal streaming stuff if I can find the time.
Gotcha.
Having two little kids, but other than that, nothing new.
And I'm Gio. Oh, thought you were done.
Finally get to finish hanging all the pictures behind me.
Yeah, that looks nice. Very cool.
Cool.
All right then. And,
Okay, so this is
G-
our 11th episode, right? Gio, did you say hi?
Yeah, I'm Gio. How's it going? See, nice to meet you. Yeah, it's our 11th episode. It seems like it's been a lot more to me. I feel like we've been doing this pretty proficiently and having a lot of great conversations for hours, and I feel like I know you guys to your core, to your souls.
Yeah, we've had some interesting conversations and some great guests so far, and we have some neat guests coming up. Gio said we'd talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going, and coming up, I know on our guest list we're hoping to schedule Mr. Tenma in here. We've got some potential visits from a couple members of the EQ Next development team coming on, and who else do we have lined up on the list, Velix?
There's like Evercast members as well.
Yeah, we've got some people lined up over the next few weeks. We're really in an interesting place because really what it's come down to is the fact that the developers have confirmed to come on the show, and they're with all the big changes coming. They might want to push back to December, so they're going to be sometime at the end of this month or December, depending on when the patches come in with all the new goodies that they've kind of talked about over the last Landmark Lives. Kind of bundling them up just because of the way that they affect the game. So that's something that we are adjusting on the fly, so we won't have as much notice of letting you know who is each week, but we definitely have a list of people that are going to be on for sure. So it's going to be a lot of fun, especially as we round up into all that content coming for people that are following the Landmark game, and also EverQuest Next. It's going to be a really good glimpse at what that game could look like once we start seeing more of the core systems make their way in to Landmark. So we're pretty excited. There's going to be a lot to talk about, and we definitely have a lot of people that are going to be a part of that discussion. The 5 hosts here, as well as an additional host or 2, and we're going to have all of our guests that are always providing awesome insight and coming here for what the show is all about, which is talking theory crafting, Landmark, and EverQuest Next. So that's really what we're about, developing the community, kind of the mindset of the game, and helping everybody kind of figure out this new beast of what this is all about. So this is what we've kind of been doing over the past weeks, hopefully, somewhat successfully, but we've had a good time. So either way, I know it's been worth it for me personally, and I know the other guys here are having a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys in the chat are having a lot of fun, and keep coming back and participating, ask questions, bring questions, definitely bring questions. Like shows like today, we have a lot of we've spaced out a lot of rooms specifically just to answer you guys' questions about the show, about Landmark, about EverQuest Next, or even about any of us. So this is kind of one of our special shows that we've put together. We kind of slated it ahead of time to be 10 episodes, 11 episodes in. We wanted to kind of check back in with what's happened over the course of the show and the course of the game since SOE Live and all that. So that's kind of what we've got going on today. But I'll pass it back to our prompt man, Sog. Go for it.
All right, we originally scheduled this day around the idea before they changed the update schedule for Landmark, because we were supposed to, at this point, have all of the optimizations and the tech upgrades in Landmark, and we actually, at this point, we've got them. Okay, we got optimization month/2 months is
month and a half, to be fair.
Okay,
month and a
but
half.
we got it, and so there isn't a whole lot to talk about this, but what do we think about the quality of the game? For months and months, the biggest complaint about Landmark was, I can't play this on my computer. Neurotoxin, why don't you sound off first about this one?
Well, I personally got a real kick-ass machine because I wanted to be able to stream and do all this sort of stuff. So it actually hasn't been too bad for me. I've been able to play all the way from alpha to now and have, fair to good gameplay. Recently, I've been having some weirdness, like the new optimizations and the multi-threading that they added. It's great, except for the fact that it causes all of my cores to be used up by Landmark. So my bot gets slow, chat gets slow, everything else gets slow because Landmark is taking it all over. So shenanigans. Eventually, I had to go into the user settings file and I turned the target FPS from 250 to 30, and holy crap, I can play Landmark again, and it's not going to destroy the rest of my machine. So it the optimization, I feel like, has been great for me, but personally I've been seeing a slow trickle of people coming in here and there that have been interested in wanting to play Landmark and finally been able to get in just a little bit more and more here and there. Plus sometimes people get new machines, and it's nice to see when more people can get included. I feel like they've got the stuff in at the right time because looking at what they want to be getting in the next 2 months to be able to get monsters and the caves going into the full depth and all of that stuff. I mean, there's still a lot of optimization they need to do before they can get to that point, like not drawing the inside of the caves while you're outside of the caves, and it draws them pretty far away. If you've ever gone under the world and seen the caves draw in the distance, yeah, that's all crap that it can cull away and just not have to draw. It's optimizations they still haven't gotten to yet, but they will. So one way or the other, they're gonna, and I think they're probably waiting till they get the full depth of the cave system in before they start really working on that, because otherwise they'd be optimizing for an incomplete system essentially, and might run into other issues later. Gotta take a little drink here.
An important thing too to mention is that we look at it, the people that have been following the game, we get our optimization month or two, or especially this last week with getting the multi-threading in, and we look at the differences. But I kind of like to look back sometimes and think about the earliest first days of alpha, when you're chopping a tree and the animation gets stuck and the sound's not even hitting at the right time, and you're rubber banding around the world. And really what we've seen over, from alpha till now, the amount of optimizations have been pretty dramatic, I think, as far as adding more and more to the game, while at the same time improving on what was originally really rough. Like at early alpha, I think everybody here was playing it at that time, and it was extremely rough to play, but it was so, interesting and different. We all kind of like just forced ourselves through it. And now, like, it's funny, the game's like getting more into it, it's getting more optimized, and now we're kind of looking at the point where the thing that's holding anybody back, if anything, is getting more people into the game and getting all these systems that are coming in to make the game feel more complete. Because now that we've been testing everything out, testing the different systems as they've come in, we're finally getting to that point to where we're looking for a complete experience. This is weird, because I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, I don't think I've ever been a participant in any game this early on and in this type of testing phase. I mean, I've worked on some tabletop games in the past, but other than that, like, I haven't been a part of something where you're testing the core mechanics out and things are changing dramatically and you're in there way before people are even seeing a complete game. So it's been quite a journey. And the optimizations, if you look back that far, the optimizations are dramatic. I can't even like really describe how big it's been. So I'm definitely hoping they make that same amount of progress from now, into the next half a year or year, to see how much optimizations they get on in the future, because that'll be, hopefully start making this game more exciting to play and more natural and fluid. So
PlanetSide 2 was the one for me that was the same way. It played, but it played like trash. Like it wasn't until I think a year after the project came out that Smedley came in and said, "This is unacceptable. You must optimize and stop all content creation." So they did that. So they stopped all content creation for like about 6 weeks, 6-8 weeks, and they went and optimized the game. So instead of it being something that they get the game to a certain point and then have to stop and do all of the optimization in one pass because things are just at a point where things are too bad, they've instead been doing the optimizations in iterations over the course of things, which has definitely been a lot better. It's been able to let a lot more people in. It's something I kind of feel weird about, because if they had been able to get the optimizations in earlier, maybe more people would have been able to start, maybe more people would have stayed. But at the same time, it's still been a long stretch of time with a lot of features anticipated, but still, kind of getting pushed back slowly. They would have been really happy if the features that they're putting in December would instead have been in July, like they're kind of anticipating. But things being what they are, I'm glad that they're going to be in December, and that like they've been saying, they're looking at having a really good fresh start for people in January, for new players to come in with the new year and have meaningful content. And not even the new year, I think they're really looking to have the content nice and solid and hopefully as bug free as possible before they go on their December break, because I'm pretty sure they're probably going to do the synchronous everybody take a break rather than the 3 weeks half the team, 3 weeks the next half of the team model that PlanetSide tried to do, because it unfortunately backfired, I think.
Yeah, the PlanetSide 2 testing was a very similar experience to Landmark testing at the beginning. I was also I think it was the first run of beta testers for that game. I got the email. It's like, wow, I get to test this new game. You know that feeling when everything was invite only, and you sent out these emails and you had to send in your PC specs and everything to hope that you made the list. And yeah, but getting into that game, and I'm bad at those kinds of games. So when I'm bad at a game like that, and it's like choppy movement, I never scored a kill in PlanetSide 2 beta, not even one, because of how bad it was. Gio, you'd talked a few weeks ago about optimization being, or more like a month ago, optimization being the key barrier to landmark combat being bigger. Do you still agree with that? Do you think that it's better, or do you think there's a different problem now?
Well, the point I was trying to say is not that landmark combat is going to be better, but that there will be a more even playing field, and it will make more sense for having tournaments, or trying to actually gauge where you stand skill wise and becoming better at the game. Those are all things that start with a base of equality. Everybody needs to be on the same, playing with the same frames. Everybody, or near the same frames. Everybody needs to be able to have the same turn quickness and less input lag, or the same input lag. A game. A lot of times I'll hear people say something is overpowered in a game, and I don't always believe them or always kind of agree with them, because you have the same ability to play that particular OP scenario. But in a game like Landmark back then, when we had no optimization, there really was the OP-ness of certain PCs having a huge advantage over others because of the optimization, or because of lack of optimization. So I think that now people have a better chance of playing fulfilling combat, because they'll actually be able to get into the game, play the combat, use all of the spells that the items and the weapons offer. They'll be able to feel like it makes more sense, and they're closer to the skill cap of their adversary. But at the same time, it doesn't excuse the lack of content. That's something that's totally different. And in fact, I actually liked the previous iteration of combat. I guess, thinking about it not having any combat, I liked having bare bones, very minimal combat, as opposed to having, right now we have compared to what we had before, we have a, not even close to there yet, but still a little bit more and more complex. And I feel like a lot of the systems don't feel tied together. The armor kind of feels, to me, it's not that important. The ability, the staff almost feels useless to me. So before I felt like there was more balance. Now I kind of feel like things are just all over the place, and yeah.
I think that combat did take a step back with the first set of changes, but I'm hoping that the first set of changes is getting closer to a base that we can move forward from. Hoping. Scott, Phantom X, we didn't hear much from you about optimization. Have you had a chance to really log in? Have you seen improvements? What do you think about it?
It seems fine. I quite honestly don't log in because I'm not I think I've said this 100 times. I'm not a builder. So I don't log in. Actually, well, it's kind of off topic, but one of I tried logging in more to do some of the combat almost. Not that there's a lot of theory crafting you can do, but just comparing things. Quite honestly, even got frustrated with that because I had to build my own to get a plot and build it. So the simple answer is it runs fine. I just don't run it.
So somebody asked a question in the chat. He said, "Do you guys think that the use of alpha or closed beta, where or are correct for Landmark?" I guess he's just asking, do you think that alpha and beta are terms that accurately describe what we're currently in? I kind of want to talk about that. I don't know about you guys.
Okay.
I feel like parts of features are in different states. Some things feel like they're in a beta state. Some things feel like they're in an alpha state.
Absolutely. And optimization, I think, is how that ties into all of this, I think, is really important too, because we one question that I have, and this will kind of maybe lead on to what I wanted to ask just now. Do MMOs require more optimization than, like, let's say an FPS or a story-driven single-player RPG? I would guess yes, because you have so many more systems in play that have variables to them, that have extra data space and stuff. I could be totally wrong though.
I don't know. I think there's more stuff to optimize for sure, but about whether it's an alpha or a beta, they said a long time ago, or SOE said, that they don't see value in the terminology that has become the standard in the past, and they're approaching development differently. I refer to this as a gated testing phase. It's not closed. It's gated because you can buy in, or you could be invited, or you could get a key from somewhere. But this is meant to be a free-to-play game, and while it's not ready, access is cost-gated, or cost or activity, or there are other ways to get in the game, but it's testing. Right now, it's a gated testing phase, whether we call it alpha or call it beta. They don't believe in the names, and they made a mistake by trying to use them with their legal issue with needing to start calling it beta, because they said it would be in beta by a certain date. I don't think that it matters, but I would say it feels like it's earlier in a game than I've ever touched still, because I'm used to seeing feature complete. All the features there, they might feel very different or be very different by the time the game's released, but I have not been part of a game testing before it was feature complete before.
And do you guys think that affects the optimization at all? Like, do you think that because we're in so early that in actually, Neuro, you probably know better than we do. Like, do you think that, or when a game is about to be released, especially such a big game like Landmark, do you think that they just totally throw optimization like pretty much out the window in the beginning just to get all the systems in?
Well, it really depends on how much time they got to work on it. If they were rushing to a deadline, or if the deadline is something that they were already way ahead of, and they're like, well, we can ease into and get in some nice optimizations before we launch it because we're ahead of schedule. That sort of stuff. If they're, dates are a really big issue with that sort of thing. But I think the other thing is, it's a little bit of a different situation. Like, live launch with Landmark is actually just a name change, basically. The soft launch is actually open beta. That's really when we actually get in and start to own things permanently. And so I think all the other thing that they're trying to do right now is any major permanent changes that they want to make, any systems they really want to test, like the weapons and armor, those things aren't going to be free items to just get from a station. I'm sure they'll start us with some weak stuff, or you can make some real weak stuff or something. But I don't think that it's just going to be free stuff that doesn't cost any resources and doesn't have any ability to be modified. I'm pretty sure going into open beta, if not into launch, it's going to have the full itemization, upgrading it to higher tiers, imbuing, reinforcing, all that other stuff, making really, really awesome pieces of equipment, and things that we might even actually have to find the recipes for, instead of just being able to go and, access the recipes at the crafting stations that, are relative to that tier.
I think everybody's touched a little bit on the core. I think one of the core things that makes it different is, everybody has said, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from somewhere and driving me crazy. Okay, there. Everybody has said a little bit about the way that, 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 the way that buying into it has changed things, and also about the labeling, which was the core, the core root of the question, because we're in a different thing completely. We should be careful not to stereotype too much of what things are and if they're being accurate to what they are or not, because I think that the only judgment call we can make is whether we like this testing phase or we don't. But trying to say whether it's a good alpha or a good beta, I think there's a mixture of things, and the fact that it's financially gated, which is kind of a new thing that a lot of games are kind of following suit, or it's gaining popularity. This is something that changes the testing completely, because now, like, not only is their goal to, hey, let's get all the features and let's get the game complete to where we're testing everything. You have people that have paid now, and yes, they pay understanding that it's a test and that it's a process, but you do have customers that you don't want to lose at that point. You have people that have invested in a little bit, and you don't want that to be their only investment they ever make in the game. So it is this like tug of war. It's it's weird because it's almost like an open beta right now, because it's gated only by money. Anybody could play it if they pay in, and that's the state it's at. And it's only $20. So I mean, if you really think about it, $20, like, that's almost open beta. Yet the state of the game is more like alpha right now. Like, as far as like what I'm seeing, I mean, in my past experience, I would say this is an alpha client. It's not, because I see beta, even a closed beta, as being feature complete, which we've kind of made it pretty clear that Landmark is not even close to feature complete right now. So it's like we're in an alpha that's in open beta, and you have people that have invested. So let's not, the terminology is going to screw everybody up, and it was probably a mistake of SOE employees using that terminology, but how are they going to explain it to us, to get us to invest, unless they can kind of use some terminology we're familiar with. So it's complicated, I think, very complicated. But if you just come into it with the mindset that this is a testing phase, I might not like everything, but I am invested. I'm just going to play the game, help them test it. I'm going to, if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. I'm going to tell them what I do and don't like. And that's this iterative process. So that's really what's the most important thing about this game. So I don't think it's too important to get caught up in what's called what right now, because it's not anything. It's just stereotypes can be a little bit double-edged. So, but those are my thoughts, just kind of on everything everybody was talking about, kind of putting the different things together.
So we got one other question that we can address very quickly. It said, I asked on Thursday on the workshop show and didn't get an answer. Do you think we'll get leather voxels to work with, since ogres are masters of leather working? I don't know. Yeah. A leather looking texture?
I mean,
Perhaps?
Yeah, no, it makes
they
sense to
might.
me. I've seen like tables and chairs and stuff where the wood is wrapped in fancy ornate leather. That's probably the most detailed thing that an ogre would use, is a leather that's actually got a pattern of some sort on it. But that would actually make sense to me. Also, if you're making like a tanning rack of some sort, or you're making like a a leather working station that you're just having as a kind of like a handmade prop in one of your builds, one of the rooms or something, even, that's the sort of thing I think where the leather would actually really work well.
I'm kind of in an opposite standpoint as far as it, like, I guess, when I think about whether they need to put a texture into a game at all, or the priority that it needs to go, I always kind of think like, well, how is this going to get used in the game 90% of the time, and a leather texture is generally going to be a prop texture, like something that's going on props. Leather itself is a flexible material that should bend. So I kind of lean towards more all the leather stuff should be props, because I think we've seen plenty of examples in Landmark of people creating builds out of props. So I mean, I don't really see a need for leather to be a voxel texture. Definitely not right away. Like they have some other things they can be getting to right now with their artists, as far as I would rather see those artists creating more props than creating more textures for something that's not generally going to be used for that purpose. So that's, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of on like the opposite end of that. But
Well, I think a big thing to note is, like, right now, or just even since the beginning, people have been forced to use voxels for detail work. And, that's something that's how, micro voxels came to be used, right? They people were needing them to be smaller. But we don't need those. We don't need those because eventually they can make props that could do that detail work for us. But in the beginning, we don't have those props because, well, they just haven't put them in yet. So hopefully over time, we will have so many props that we will no longer need detail work from voxels. The voxels can make up the buildings. The props can make up the everything that details, and because those will look, they will look quote unquote fancier, or they will look more detailed, and they can get really in depth with how they look. That to me, to go back, I think Sag was talking about this a couple weeks ago, to make a AAA game, I think we need that. Like, we need to really separate the uses of voxels and the uses of props. And I, on the other hand, think that leather is interesting because leather, I mean, I don't like, besides like a giant like padded cell or like a nightclub, I can't really think of any other reasons to like use leather in abundance, like for a wall.
Ooh,
or
I have another reason.
Sure.
So when you're those like giant Colossus builds, or when people are making large statues and large sculptures and stuff, you can actually make it look like it's wearing leather armor.
That's
and
true.
it'll look all kick-ass, and you can actually use the game itself as a way to make large, kind of almost blocky custom armor and equipment concepts that you can then be like, hey, I'd love to see this as actual armor that people can use.
Well, I guess it's like these are very niche situations, things that we don't see the majority of landmark builders going for. So maybe overall, maybe like down the road, I would love to see leather props in the game. But kind of like what Vel said, I think that right now it doesn't seem necessary. The props, I'm sorry, leather textures. The props definitely, I think, would be a cool idea. But
weapons, custom weapons and shields and stuff is the other thing.
I kind of look at it as the idea of rope. Rope is a similar type of material where it's, like a flexible material, not generally used to build something solid out of, that. And I liked the way that the way they ended up doing rope as a prop, and the way that you're able to use it. I saw a ton of great builds for the carrying competition with rope, and I would like to see the same thing with leather, I guess. I thought it worked well the way they did it with rope. So I don't see any reason why leather wouldn't, have an equally successful, outcome of doing that type of prop that you can adjust and tweak and, resize and all kinds of stuff. So I think that's kind of the direction I would see, and I would expect all the fabrics to generally go towards, like, even when people brought up, I think, in the past, early on in alpha, of having, fabric textures for voxels, that's maybe more important because there are buildings created out of fabric, like Indian teepee. So that's a little bit more, well, I guess that's leather. So I'm countering. So,
but like the covers outside of the fancy buildings, or when you're doing market stalls and bazaars, you're using cloth for that. So when we stopped having to use shiny rubicite and cobalt and stuff, when we actually got shiny rubicite and cobalt before we were even using other crap. So when cloth finally came in, it was really nice material to be able to use. And of course, everybody was already making banners. I had made a banner way early in beta. I would have loved to have had that as a material option.
Imagine it, though, if they got it to the point where you could apply, you had a cloth and you could apply, almost like in other games, you're able to paint something. You're able to just apply a color sequence to it, and then you can drop it, especially when they get physics in at some point, You can drop it and then lock it in place after it's, gotten a natural hang or sag or whatever. I would see that as even a more ideal, finished, polished system than, trying to arbitrarily use voxels. I mean, I definitely see the importance for voxels to be used in building with having textures that'll be fabric, but I don't know, I'm just of that standpoint where let's, push them towards the more end polished result, because I don't know, I think now that we've got, it's kind of interesting that we're talking about this now, because now we've gotten to the point where the developers are realizing that they can't put every little different system they want in, when they want to, or piece by piece. Like, now they're kind of realizing they've got to kind of bundle these things in because it's going to change the way the game works. So they've got to group things, and they've got to push big things at one time. So I would kind of expect to see more of that, the artists and the coders and everybody being dedicated to really getting a full group of things working and going. So we're going to probably see less and less of these, like quick fixes or temporary props and not props, whatever. Man, I'm so out of vocabulary today. It's done. My speaking. So, okay,
my opinion is, unless you can make a case that without this texture or without this prop, the development of EverQuest Next through the workshop or whatever is stunted without that being in Landmark now, that the energy should be put into developing other systems, because we can have new textures and new props forever. The question isn't, in my mind, should we have leather, like studded leather textures for voxels? Yes, we should have billions of potential textures. We should have user-generated textures. We should have all of these things.
Procedural textures.
In the future. We should have the ability to create effects on custom-made textures like the water effects and like transparency toggles. But unless we need it now, adding textures is so low on my priority list. I want to get closer to the finished game systems.
Well,
if it's really just adding a texture, just adding a texture, whatever. I know that takes quite a bit of effort and work. We should have this stuff. It would be great to have it, but should we have it right now? I don't think we need it right now.
Right.
Anything else on this before I did have one topic that we can talk about for quite a while.
Actually, I wanted to ask you guys something. Are you guys familiar with? This has to do kind of with Fabric. Are you guys familiar with the way that the weather works in Landmark? Like, I think as far as I understand, there's like a passive wind that actually can be turned on and off, and it can. I think that they're working on making it so that it can change. Like, you can have different wind speeds, and that's what eventually the flags will like go with, like the wind patterns. Is this something that you guys have heard?
I asked that way back in alpha if we could get toggleable on and off states for the flags for the wind, and I guess being able to have like a power meter in a direction would be nice too. So go ahead.
Weather is intended for Landmark and absolutely will be a part of EverQuest Next. From what I've heard, I don't know how much of it is already in the game behind the scenes, or where that is on the priority list.
Yeah, because Zulji was talking a little bit about fabrics moving, and I kind of was thinking back to like when the flags were just limp and they were just hanging there. Yeah, and I was trying to, and I remember hearing a reliable source, somebody who really knows a lot about game development, telling me that was something that they were doing, that they had this kind of like back behind the scenes wind and weather that even I think it was part of the it's part of what's that system, the light, why can't I remember what it's called, the Light Forge.
Forge Light.
Forge Light. I always say Light Forge. Damn it! It's part of the Forge Light engine, as far as I know, like the intense weather stuff. So, either way, that to me, in combination with really cool props, because right now we obviously have the ability for props to move. I would love to see like really cool cloth props that sort of we can have the ability to like apply like wind to them, so that they kind of can look like they're going through effects or something.
That's one of the most like underestimated things I think that exists about what they're doing with this system with Landmark and EverQuest Next, the type of terrain, in the engine, the mapping system, because they really, from what we've discovered about the way voxels work, they'll have the ability to paint, they can paint any voxel and saying, well, there's wind in this voxels, or, and they can procedurally probably set clouds and stuff to grow and different things. So it's definitely, the weather is, and they've talked about, having the water that melts and the way that we can change the things in the world. It's definitely something that is going to be, weather. We'll see a lot of different things about weather, and the way the system kind of works from the bare bones that we've seen. When they get to the point where they're going to start doing that, they have the ability to do things that we've never seen in any games before, as far as weather's concerned.
One of the questions I had posed to Miguel from Voxel Farm was weather related to voxels, puddling of water from rain and snow tracks and stuff like that. And he said that's all possible. I don't know if they're going to do that, but he said it's basically all possible.
I guess that goes back to what Sog was talking about a couple weeks back. Will Sony inherit that sort of that data or whatever they need to make that? Do they want to do that? I think for a game like EverQuest Next, with procedural content and with the way the story is going to be, I think it would really, really help with the immersion to have that kind of stuff. But
there's also that ongoing decision-making process that they have, where EverQuest Next is already this project where they've decided to reach for more in the I want list than anyone ever has. I feel like, everybody has that I want this game to have, and this is giant list, and then you pick out the things based on how feasible they are and how you're going to implement them. And EverQuest Next took that I want list and dumped it on their plate instead of, piecemeal choosing. So things that are still left in that I want list, that's a big deal.
Yeah, so the term feature creep, when you're trying to design something, you're making progress on it, and then there's all these different features you want to put into it, and it starts to get to be this big giant list of features that eventually a AAA console game will generally have to cut some of them to make deadlines. But with the idea of Landmark being a perpetually developed project, they'll eventually get through all of those features. It's not so much feature creep as like, this is just our gigantic to-do list, and just some things are higher priority and some things are lower priority, and some things are maybe like they'll only do it if fans are asking them consistently for a year, but they'll still definitely do it. It might just be really difficult, but if people really want it, they'll do it.
One of the things that I would be actually, for me, most interested with weather, and there was a new, the latest PC Gamer Mag had sort of an update on Oculus and the earbuds and the realness now that they're adding sound, and so you can imagine with wind and speeds and rain and just how cool that could potentially be. But that's probably who knows how long from now. But
a quick thing that is important to mention too, it was something I kind of had asked in my interview with Steve Denuser and Terry Michaels last week that I'm going to be publishing pretty soon here on EQ Hammer.
Nice.
I'll paraphrase a little bit here, but we kind of talked with them about what they view as pitfalls of MMOs or things that they've disliked about present day MMOs, that what are they doing in it, and I asked them what are they doing in EverQuest Next and Landmark to ensure those kind of things don't happen. And they talked about a lot of things that they want to do differently, but we got to the point where they were saying there's really a big list of things they want to do, and I ended up asking them the question, are you guys making this game in a way that you're going to be able to add that stuff later on? Because I kind of asked them about the core technology a little bit, and they basically said, to paraphrase, that they've really designed the game from the ground up to be this editable system almost, to where like even a year into EverQuest Next they can add a whole new core system into it, like something really that changes everything, just because of the type of technology they're trying to put into the game in the ground level, so that in the future it's way easier to modify than like the old EverQuest, where you try and add something new to the game and it might break a lot of things. The way they're trying to do it now is to where it's this very it's almost like a voxel system itself, the way the game is. So that's something that should be considered when we think about future end goals, like, oh, they didn't get this in the game, but the way that the architecture of the system is being set up, from what the developers are saying anyways, is that these things have much higher potential to enter the game after launch and release than in games they've done in the past, is basically what they told me. So that's, I think that I just wanted to mention that pretty quick because it's a pretty significant difference than other MMOs in the past.
So going on that, I think this is unless someone had something else they wanted to add directly to this, I think that's a good springboard into something that, a topic that I'd wanted to bring up. That in the past, a PvE-centric MMORPG, that when you logged into the game, you were picking up where you left off to do something along a somewhat predefined path, where you always knew where you were going. So you log in, and even if that means that you're just part of a rating progression, or if you're looking for the next piece of gear, that you always knew what you were doing when you logged in. And the desire to log in was the desire to continue this quest that was kind of laid out before you. Where in a PvP-centric MMORPG, you logged into the game because you wanted to find out what was going on, and then you were reacting. So, like, you didn't log in to Dark Age of Camelot because you wanted to continue your gear grind to go to get that one next piece so that you could go to the next dungeon. You logged into Dark Age of Camelot because you wanted to see who was, infringing on your territory. You needed to know what was going on. So this feeling of getting into a game because you're excited to jump into the action, and you're reacting to the fact that the world changed while you were away and something different is happening. Now, do we believe... I think that there's a lot of potential with the Storybricks AI and the Rosong system for EverQuest Next to give us a PvE experience more like what we see out of what we see from PvP experiences like that than what we generally see from a PvE experience. So
we're actually going to be role playing. This is what a novel concept, an MMO where you're actually role playing, where your actions have consequences. That's what, and also where you don't go from some crappy little nooblet to like awesome super badass like eat 10 dragons hearts every day like super warrior. It's gonna be not necessarily a completely flat progression. There's probably going to be a little bit of kind of verticality, but by and large there's going to be more of a horizontal expansion, and it's the style and builds and such that's going to be the big thing, and not so much getting to level 60 and then finally starting to do stuff. And that's another thing I appreciate. It's take your own chances, stay along the roads if you want to fight orcs, and especially if it's just you and a couple of friends. But if you got like 10 or 15 people and you're all really, really tough and you're looking for danger, go out into Firot. Go pick a fight.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the way the core systems are shaping up to be from what they've proposed and shown off at SOE Live, because that type of potential can really carry forward, not just in the way that we've mentioned already here about, having a PvE experience that's modeled after a very, liked and loved PvP-centric experience, but taking that, an edge further and start to implement, new types of PvP mechanics or systems, if you will, that, where people can opt in to PvP within their PvE environment. Like, there's really a lot of opportunities here for them to take this and run with it. We don't really know exactly, that was another thing that I pushed in my previous interview, was a question, like, well, what are your guys' plans for open PvP? And, I really tried to dig for a question, but, it's from their response, it sounds like they're getting further to having a final decision on that, but they are in no way, ready to talk about what they're going to do for PvP and EverQuest Next. And my gut feeling is that it's just because it's going to give so much away about, the different concepts that they're merging and that they've kind of found a way to finally do in a way that's fulfilling for both somebody that loves PvE and PvP. So I'm really excited. Like, I'm literally just sitting back and watching this thing, evolve and get built, because I already have such a good feeling about, its potential. Even if they screw this up, I think it's going to be a better game than some of the other previous games in the past that did similar things. So I'm kind of excited for the future no matter what. I've got that, like, expectations, moderate low, but potential high viewpoint. So I'm excited.
I mean, you did bring up a great point, Saga, and that is, it is really interesting to look on the history of game development and how they've had to go about creating incentive to log in. I think that's a wonderful idea to talk about. And I think that we're going to start seeing those things in general start to disappear because of the ability for games to become, and I don't want to say, I don't mean to bring this up to start the argument, but to become more sandboxy, right? They will have more, there will be more open ends, there will be less linear progression, like you just said, and those things in itself will, in my opinion, just create a new a new kind of incentive altogether. And I feel exactly MMVR. But with EverQuest Next, I really want to hope that we get, to what you were talking about, Val. I really want to hope that we get RP servers and PvP servers. Unless they're willing to give us straight up open world PvP on all servers, which personally I like ganking people, so I would love that. But unless they're willing to do that, I feel like it would be a huge mistake for them to eliminate the people who want a PvP experience, because based on what we can see in general from trends of all other games that are popular on PC right now, PvP is probably the most defining factor of the most successful games. League of Legends, Dota 2, World of Tanks. These are based on PvP specifically. Blizzard, which is Activision, one of the biggest gaming companies, recently all the games that they're having come out are almost all based strictly on PvP. Heroes of the Storm. What's the other one? The new game that they just announced, Overwatch. So I think that they need to focus on. They have the systems in place to create an epic and beautiful lore-filled environment for PvEers. But if they ignore PvP, I think it'll be a big mistake for them.
There's a benefit too to them, the fact that they're doing this game the way they are and revamping like the core. They're really like resetting everything and reevaluating from the ground up. So I think that bodes well. I think for me personally, knowing that if they're doing all of that, they're probably doing a good job paying attention to what the general population is generally playing out there. So when they build something from the ground up, this should be like a core feature of it. And I expect, based on what I've heard from developer quotes, that PvP is going to be equally ingrained into the system of all the systems of the game in value, as far as like, okay, I really like PvPing, I'm going to go in and PvP, and it's going to be just as valuable to your character's progression and experience and your the whole journey of your character as any other part of the game. So that's what I'm hoping.
I say if not more, actually, because there is the fact that at the end of a battle it's going to be players and players fighting each other. All the NPCs and everyone else have been slain, and it's just up to the players to finish the battle. That's the sort of stuff. Or you have the players leading the charge, and you have like one player leading a small resistance, and yeah, they get steamrolled, but you get remembered for leading that resistance, and you get a lot of rep for it.
I think it plays into PvE. Like, I think there can be a lot of ways for them to really incorporate both of them together, and that's something that I think we were going to talk about a couple weeks ago, where we did talk about. It's a really interesting sort of ground that people just talk about all the time. There's so many conversations about no, PvP is the devil, or PvE is too boring, and there's no reason that we can't have both existing, like you were just saying, on the same playing field. But then the question is like, how in a sandbox environment, how do we limit? Do we limit PvP at all, or do we make it seem like it's just what a fantasy, all other fantasy worlds would be like? You're out in the world, there's somebody in front of you, you can kill them or you can let them go.
To me, I see it being as simple as basically like Dynasty Warriors, the console game versus each other, and with the option to flag on or off for fighting the other generals of the army. Almost like I really see it like as having that type of potential. You've got other goals to take certain things, and people can be on their PvE. They want to do the PvE things and take out swarms of bad guys and stuff, and be really feel powerful and cool. But at the same time, you have the opportunity for mono generals duking it out in the midst of a huge fray. Like I see it, having that type of potential with something as simple as just an on and off flag. But I'd like to see other systems besides something like that, because I think there's more potential than that. But
I just got this hilarious idea in my head going back to the SOE Live Storybricks video, where the Dark Elf locations are and where the Dryad nodes are. Those actually being the kind of spawn points, and the lanes kind of being created between them of the waves of enemies, and it almost being like constant mini MOBAs going on. I don't know if it's going to work like that, but that would definitely be really interesting. If you want to do PvP, yeah, you just ride along with the waves and you go tackle whoever the champions are on the other side, and if there are none, you steamroll and move on to the location and start banging on the walls.
Yeah, I think that'll be really neat. I think it will feel a lot like that too. And what I was trying to get at from the question was what it feels like to log into a game. And will EverQuest Next be able to, give me this feeling that when I log in, I'm reacting to the world, that I'm reacting to what's going on around me, instead of being the primary driving force to everything that happens. So this week I logged into World of Warcraft, Star Wars The Old Republic, and Final Fantasy XIV. And every single time, in every single game that I logged into, everything that I did was initiated by me. I chose where to go, whether or not to click the accept button, and then I went through whatever it was, whether it was doing a dungeon or group content or solo content. That's what I did. But what I want out of a game is I want to log in and go, I want to feel like the world has some control already. And I'm in anticipation, and being the optimist that I am, I think that EverQuest Next is going to do this. I think that there's going to be that feeling that when I log in, I will be able to decide where I go, but I'm going to see there's all of this happening there. So I either decide that I'm going to go where everything's happening and things are already kind of spiraling out of my control, and I try to find one way that I can contribute to something bigger instead of being the center of the action. So in Final Fantasy XIV, every single player in the game is the center of their own story that all seem to happen simultaneously. There are millions of ultimate heroes.
It's so interesting that just the way that you said all that, because really, you just painted the picture psychologically. When a player is getting in the game, in the type of games that are out there, we're doing all the work. You're coming into a game, to play and have fun, but you're doing work. Now, if you come into a game where it's got a lot of self, initiative, and it's kind of doing its own thing, now you're participating. It's less about you working. You're not creating the story to happen. It's not all about you, laboring to experience the game. It's happening around you. You can sit there and watch it even if you want. You know, if you're busy and you don't have time to really invest a lot, you could just have it on and have your character like watching a battle unfold. You know, and that's one thing that I think makes it really interesting, because it makes it more of a game. You know, it makes it even more of a game because it's not even a work anymore. Like, you can totally take a day off if you want, participating, still watching the world change and evolve, but you don't have to do the work for that to happen. And if you want to do the work, you can be more impactful. So I like that. Like, just the way that you said it kind of clicked in my head, you know, like it's turning it from being just a game that's a job into a game that's back into a game, really.
Or it's more like, to me, sounds more like a virtual reality. Like, that's to me, that's, I think, the point of everything, is that you don't want it to have to exist because of you. You want it to exist on its own, like real life, you know? And have we had any games, have you guys played any games that you've actually ever felt like that? I have never.
Only PvP only games.
Right.
Only games where all of the content is driven by what other players are doing. I've never played a game where the AI and the game itself is creating. But I mentioned Dark Age of Camelot, that, you know, people played Dark Age of Camelot to interact with the way that players had been changing the feel of what was. It was a PvP mess, you know. People, that was my feeling of, in a positive way. But I have seen this kind of feeling only in PvP environments. So, for example, completely different type of game that people may have really negative opinions about, Evony. It's a money sucker. You know, we know all the terrible things about Evony. But when you log into Evony, if you're playing Evony, the world is about what's happened. You log in and you react to what's happened around you. There's something... If nobody's attacked you or nobody's moved near you, you can just, you know, attack NPCs around you. But the real game is driven by what players are doing. And I'm hoping that the AI in EverQuest Next can, you know, recreate that kind of feeling.
And that's...
I played some games where people call you on the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning to say, our base is getting invaded and you need to get out of bed to help defend right now.
Did you get out of bed? That's the real question.
Oh, damn right I got out of bed. I wasn't letting my men down.
So
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been pretty quiet.
Yeah, go ahead.
The whole idea of that sounds great, Sog. I think it really depends on how it's presented. There still needs to be direction. I think if you just put someone in a sandbox world, I think what they're going to find is most people won't stick with it if they don't have some sort of direction. You know, it's been 10 years of WoW now that almost everyone that is gamer in this, there's very few people that are actual original EQ Ultima Online players when you look at it. And so I hope there's still some sort of direction. I know Rosong hopefully will take up that role, but to put someone in and say, okay, pick how you want to affect this world, they're going to give it a go for an hour or two. And if I just think there needs to be direction. The other thing is, talking about PvP, the question that always comes to my mind, and I don't play MOBAs, I'm not good at them, is the average MOBA game, when these two get compared, the thought that comes to my mind is the average MOBA player and MMO player. What I mean is, you know, MOBAs in general are what? They're short-paced, not they're fast-paced, short-lived games.
Limited arena instance sort of things.
Is that type of player going to allow an MMO to thrive for years and years and years? Are they going to have that sort of sustainability within that game to keep it going? I don't know. I'm not saying that they don't. I don't play them, so that's the question that always comes to my mind. That's where the money is, but is that the audience you want for an MMO?
It's really funny because Gio and I were playing some League of Legends last night, and we were actually like talking about this very same thing about, like, because I've been playing League of Legends, you know, on and off lately, but back since, you know, it first launched 4 years ago or whatever. And we were just kind of commenting to each other how, like, we both still really love this game. We may not play it as much, but when we get in and have the experience, like, it's still really fresh just because of the mechanics, the way they've designed it. So, like, even though it's a limited, temporary instance battlefield, it's always changing and it's always fresh and fun. And really, if EverQuest Next comes along the way that we're kind of, expecting it to, or the way we foresee, it's going to be a lot of this almost MOBA-esque, like, shifting battlefield, and the world's going to change constantly. And I think that's something, that I would credit most, even MOBA players, to being familiar with. Even though it's going to be a persistent world that stays the way it was, or not stays, but I mean, it's going to, anything that you change is going to stay that way until somebody else changes it, or the world itself kind of changes things. But you're going to be constantly, like Neuro said, there's going to be all these little MOBA battlefields everywhere. So it's almost like you're jumping into, a bunch of different games constantly, but it's all one persistent thing. So not only does it give the MOBA players kind of an experience that they enjoy already, but now they're invested, because now it's not just your little summoner profile and you're unlocking champions. You're invested in a world that is permanently changed because you chose to act. So I think it's something like really.
Again, my thought. Well, but how long are these events going to last? Rallying calls, weeks, right? Weeks,
months.
But
I mean, is someone gonna?
Rallying calls will only be some of the content. There will be ongoing content in every zone all the time at a lesser level. I imagine a rallying call. There aren't going to be that many rallying calls, because aren't they GM-driven events with major persistent changes?
Yeah, they're very, very special events that, I don't know if they're player activated, or it's something that's going to happen anyway, or if it's a combination of the two. But I think if we look back at the SOE Live Storybreaks video, I don't think that's a raid call. I don't actually believe that was a raid call. That's just some battle going on.
But
So,
for me-
and that
for me,
could
it
last
comes
weeks
down
on its own.
I think it'll
how
last
long it
months.
takes. That's all I'm saying. It's
I
just
think
how
those things
long-
will be. I actually personally don't think there will almost ever not be a rallying call. I think that rallying calls will probably come in and out of each other potentially, because to me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for them to just say, "Let's give you a big change," and then leave the world alone for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Why don't they should, in my opinion, for the new players, especially because rallying calls, I believe they've talked about rallying calls being so essential for the new players to get into the game. Like, they should probably be happening one after another, big changes constantly happening in the world, while also allowing people to go out and explore. That's what I would
Overlapping.
think.
I
Exactly.
think they
Maybe
will
even
be
more.
overlapping, because they've talked about rallying calls not only being potentially the establishment of a new place, but potentially the defense of a major, major, major force that could actually, if they succeed, destroy one of our locations, one of our, somewhat permanent cities. So, or at least knock it back down a few tech levels and require us to come back and build it up for a while. So that's one of those major considerations, is that they're both used for creation as they are for destruction, and there could be one going on for both at the same time, pretty much all the time.
Another thing too that I would say, to get back to Phantom X's original question, his original concern, I would almost, say too, when you're asking that question, you also have to understand what, the people that come into MOBAs and play, because, like, I can only speak from my own experience, but, still playing the game 4 years later, I don't come into play to destroy the Nexus that I've done, 300, 400 times. I come into play because it's an evolving, landscape and battlefield. And if EverQuest Next accomplishes that, it doesn't matter if somebody, is participating in a rallying call that takes, 3 weeks compared to the 30 minutes they're used to. What the core mechanics that they're coming in to play the game for are there, not necessarily like the whole complete little microcosm picture, because it's stretched out longer. So I would almost say that, like, it might be a concern, but from my personal experience in MOBAs, I don't really come into MOBAs to get the whole battle. I come in there to get that evolving, to always being in a fresh, new, unpredictable sense of combat amongst other players and AI, where you're always on your toes, really, and everything's changing, and you always got to keep learning. So it's not like I really come there to win or lose. I want to win because I'm competitive, but in a MOBA, I don't really come in to play it to win. Like, I come in to play it to just enjoy the mechanics of it. So, and that's what's kept me around it, because they did such a great job making those things successful that it doesn't matter if I lose 100 games, I'm still going to play it because, it's not necessarily to me about getting through the complete process. It's about the journey more so than the destination, I guess.
So one thing about a MOBA that was part of the reason that they exist is like coming out of the MMORPG genre. Some of these like Dota style MOBAs kind of came out of there, and there's this feeling that you have if you were ever a level 80 character in World of Warcraft when that was max level. Dalaran was basically your loading screen. It was the same as opening up your Smite or League of Legends. You could just run around. There was this little, you could run around the circle, but really you still had a waiting for match timer. If you were doing PvP, it was waiting for match. If you were doing dungeons, it was looking for group. And we talk about, if we can have this world that has, hundreds of different mini MOBAs going on at the same time, all intertwined. Now, managing it so that the town is not just your game select, so they're finding a way to make it still feel like it's part of an ongoing world is going to be a big challenge for the devs, because it
games
can't
have done
be.
that.
Well, if it's instant action is already in PlanetSide 2. So you log in at your base and you open up Rosong and you click, yes, I am going right there. So then, and even though you do have the option to walk into the next area, you still open it up and you click fast travel. So then, finding a way to intertwine the world so that then Rosong isn't your game select screen, and it really is a world. It's a big challenge. I don't even know the answer to, because I want the feeling, like Velix said, where imagine that you have that awesome action, but yet it means something, and that you're moving around, and it's part of this whole world. But it's hard to do that. It's hard to make that happen while still offering conveniences that players expect out of games.
Like a basic new MMO that released that had something similar to this, and you have experience with this, would be Arcade, right? So how do you did you ever get to do any of the sort of open world PvP events that were happening in Arcade?
Nobody plays Arcade anymore.
No. I'm sure that nobody. I don't play it either. I'm just saying, did you ever get the chance to experience that?
I did not.
The point is that they basically. I mean, this is not what I would like to see, but this is how they solve this issue, and this is a solution to it. Basically, it's on a timer that the worlds are constantly at war or at peace. When they're at war, and then there's different grades in between them, like conflict and dire conflict, whatever. And the worse it gets, the closer you are to actually triggering this event. Eventually, this event is triggered, and you can see it on your map, kind of like what I would assume the Rosong would do. And you can see it says this area is in conflict, and as soon as it's in conflict, it triggers this the event, and the event is something like what you would experience from an instance PvP arena or something of that matter. For example, Hasla was a really popular one, and there were two giant crystals on both sides of the map, and when the world went into conflict, basically you had to push into the enemy's crystal and kill their shit. So, I mean, that is a current solution for a sandboxy type game. Is that something that you think could work, given that it would have the added AI implementations and those kinds of things? Would that style work inside of EverQuest Next?
What I see the AI in EverQuest Next being, aside from all of our, preconceptions of it, it really almost functions like giving the world its own automation. No longer do the players have to, choose entirely what happens. If every player in the game in one particular server didn't do anything, the world would change based on who was winning what particular conflict because of the way the NPCs were interacting and stuff like that. So, really, that's the way the AI is different from EverQuest Next and other games I see, like from a mechanical standpoint. So, having a system like you just described in ArcAge, where, like you have these risk levels that are, everybody is aware of, basically, and then it goes and triggers into this, basically turns it into open world PvP in a specific area or something like that. Like, I see that, being a workable mechanic for EverQuest Next. The only difference is that in EverQuest Next, the players might not have done anything to cause that, and the NPCs could have screwed each other around, and all of a sudden you've got an open world PvP, which I don't think is a bad thing either. I think that's pretty cool that you just all of a sudden the NPCs have harassed each other enough that war breaks out, and now the players really do have to get involved because it could be lethal enough to where with the permanent change they're talking about that orcs or what have you will just annihilate an entire important city. So people have to take action at that point. So I almost see that as like not only being a potential solution, but also, fitting right in with the mode they want for the game. This mentality of.
I hate to say what I'm about to say, but at the end of the day, the game, the server, the systems can still do whatever it needs to, whatever it wants to, above and beyond what players can possibly do. If the game decides they want to spawn 10,000 ogres and have them stampede through southern Antonica in search of their old homes, yeah, they're going to do that. And whether there's 10 people on the server or 10,000 people on the server, that event is going to happen, and it's going to be, mayhem in that area. If you're on their side, that's awesome. You're going to ride along with them. You're going to smash a lot of faces. You're going to learn a lot of stuff, see a lot of cool stuff, get a lot of rep with the ogres. If you try to resist them, or you're in an area that they're going through and you're part of the resistance, you might get your face smashed in, or you might fight well and they're like, hey, you guys are totally getting your faces smashed in, but like, we respect you. Either roll with us or get the hell out of here. There might be various different events that occur. Go ahead.
No, I think that I think that mechanic can work within here. I think there definitely should be that sort of PvP nature. My argument would be that there needs to be other ways to contribute just as meaningfully as if you were doing a PvP situation, whether that's crafting or PvE, and being able to do it in a PvP free environment.
What's interesting is I can imagine now having a zone and essentially designating a choke point, or maybe like something that makes sense with the lore, a piece of that zone strictly for PvP because it makes sense with the story, and then having everything around it kind of just be PvE based. Like there's certain things that you can farm in those areas. There's certain NPCs that you can do quests for in those areas, and what that would do would essentially create that sort of environment where you can choose. But it still feels organic, and it feels less like, oh, I'm just going to throw on a PvP flag, and more like, it makes sense with the story. I'm running into this zone. This is where the PvP needs to happen because we need to obtain this crystal, and and then everybody else that doesn't want to do PvP can stand on the outside and do whatever they got to do.
Well, we know that there's going to be player-only interactions at the very least. That, like, they went even with Storybrooks when they talk about the NPCs taking zones and progressing, that this is something that could happen, but the Dryads aren't going to wipe out the Night Elves without anybody ever helping them. There's always a piece where players need to be involved. And if there are player contested player objects of whatever they are, even if it's if I pick this up and return it to the Dryad camp, they get stronger, then there needs to be a way for somebody else to stop me from picking up that item somehow. I feel like it can't be the like it can't just be a race on either side. Well, we got more sticks than you got sticks, so we win. There has to be a way to stop people from getting sticks.
So, well, wouldn't
Or
that be
you
the
go
PvE?
and burn their pile of sticks.
That
Yeah,
could be
well,
cool. That's PvE. That's kind of PvP though, right?
It's still PvP if you're
It's not
burning
combat,
their
yeah.
sticks, even if you're not attacking their person. That's still a player versus player mechanic. And people may not see it that way, and it might not get as much anger. But I think Gio was going to say the same thing. That's still PvP.
Yeah.
But
And,
I'm going to smack somebody.
But we can have
like,
monsters that kind of do that. They are that resistance, right? Like you can say, okay, you every time when you get a certain amount of this thing, a raid boss will spawn, and he will be in covering a secret orb that you need to recover. So you need to then band together as a raid and go get that before the enemy does. But they have their own raid boss that's kind of doing their own thing. The only thing with what I'm suggesting here with or what I suggested before, and then how this would play out would be that would really it doesn't really sound that open. It sounds like it would still need to be every instance would need to be very linear in the way that they do things, fair on both sides.
I kind of disagree, only because from what we've seen in the most recent Storybricks presentation, the content delivery where they did the simulations of how things work, we do know that resources are going to be the driving force mechanic primarily. There might be other things that get added later as far as like wanting to eliminate a certain faction or anything, but generally everybody's going to operate on the resources they want. Players are going to want particular resources, and for players it'll be a little more complex. A resource to us might be meeting up with the Ashen Order to becoming a monk, or different things like this. So like that might be something that's valuable to us, but for the most part, as far as all the NPC AI that are going to be conflicting, they're all going to have their set of defined goals, and we're going to kind of know what resources they want, and they're not just going to be in one place. So you're going to see this interlacing across zones having different resources and stuff, and whatever factions that want that particular resource are going to be involved there. So it's going to be a extremely complex thing, but at the same time straightforward, because you're going to know which factions want what, and your awareness of the world in knowing where things are at, you're going to always know where to go. And there's not really, it's almost like we get back to the MOBA example of it's not so much about balance anymore. They don't really balance champions in MOBAs to the sense that like they have to make sure each one conflicting with each one works. It's the world is so complex that really there's always going to be a counter to any one bad situation. So they won't even really have to balance this, like sticks versus sticks thing, because the world has the opportunity to counterbalance by more people in that area, countering the stronger force. When the stronger force is starting to get more of the resources that maybe everybody needs to slightly be sharing, unhappy fashion where some, it's a back and forth over it. So I think it's going to be like just the complexity of it will kind of help alleviate some of the complaints for any type of stuff that might feel like instanced or unbalanced, one side versus the other. I think it's going to be like 80 sides versus 80 sides, and they'll change. It's going to be definitely different than anything we've seen so far. I think it's hard to, I don't know. I lost my point.
That's kind of the essence of what this all is, though. There's so much potential, and it's so big of a concept that we are probably hitting on one of the many nails that could exist in how this can play out. And probably there could be more than one way. There doesn't have to be like one system that they use to put in play here. So it's easy to kind of to totally spin off into a place where you don't know where you are when you're talking about this game.
So we're running out of time. No last minute questions have popped up. There's been some interesting chat. Diggs, as usual, has been very helpful with helping to fill out our ramblings in chat.
We love you, Diggs. Yeah,
Diggs, we got to get you on here one of these days. You're awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we should. Anytime. I'm happy to have Diggs.
Hint, hint.
Anywhere I am, anytime. Intimately, yes. So
It got weird, Sog.
since we don't have any questions, do any of you guys have a last minute brief thing to say, or should we start saying goodbye?
I guess best of luck to all of the Karen competition submissions. We still haven't heard back yet, so hopefully this coming week we'll finally hear about it and we'll see those fancy first places going around.
Velix wanted to say something briefly about.
No, I was just waving. I'm like,
You
I'm done.
said earlier in chat that you wanted to
Oh.
briefly touch on some changes at 10 Ton Hammer.
Oh
That's
yeah,
Doing
that's pretty-
as the start of our goodbyes.
yeah. I think it's pretty relevant. I mean, EQ Hammer's been one of the places. I think one of the only places where like regular, pretty much daily content has come out specifically about Landmark and EverQuest Next. You know, we had a very dedicated team there of. It was 4. It went to 3 people, and you know, some changes are happening in the network that you know the state of the game isn't currently supporting everything. So. It's getting kind of cut back a lot. I won't know more really until next week as far as the entire future, but it's not going to be as active. We had some great writers that are no longer there, which if you've been following Twitter, you will have seen departed and gone to another area in life. So wishing the best to Phil and Shaylin both, but there's going to be some changes. There's still going to be a little bit of content coming out from EQ Hammer, and I've got that interview that I kind of referred to a couple times today that will be going up. But look for some changes there. We're still planning to cover these games a lot, but my role will change, and EQ Hammer itself's role will change slightly in what's happening there. So it's a kind of a big change. I know everybody here in the community, not everybody, but a lot of people were following, Shaylin, and she was really the lead charge there at EQ Hammer. So I'm sad to see her go. I really enjoyed working with her. I had a great time with her. She was a great, editor to work for. So I did want to throw that out there, so that everybody knows. And I know people were asking questions, and it's not up to me to say, what happened, why, or for what. And I don't even know everything, but I just know it was a lot of upper, higher choices that weren't in a lot of people's control. So, but we're gonna miss her, and she's still gonna be active in the community. I've seen, she's got her own blogs going, and she's still gonna be there. So everybody will get to follow her still, but it'll be in a different location. So I just kind of wanted to get that out so people didn't like taking whatever rumors for whatever rumors. Just kind of handle everything firsthand with people if you can. It's always the best way to do things, I think. So, but that's all I wanted to say. Everybody else can kind of do their goodbyes. I'll wave my goodbye. You guys have heard enough from me today. I've talked way too much for
Nothing out of the ordinary.
yes.
To hear Velix speak more tomorrow, Velix and I, as Diggs mentioned, we're doing our infamous Loregasm. And that is not a physical activity, it is a stream. And we actually talk about all sorts of things lore related to EverQuest Next, and just how it generally ties into MMOs. We also are usually lucky enough to get some of the devs to hang out with us, and it's like in chat and stuff, and it's really cool to have them there. So to answer some questions and whatnot. Tomorrow we're coming back, 12 p.m. Pacific from now on. It's on Saturdays. Also, this is obviously my live stream, so if you enjoyed, you can follow me and follow Sog and Neurotoxin, all of the streamers involved in this. And I wanted to say, just from my end, before I move on to Sog, thank you guys for an awesome 10 episodes, and the past, the present, and the future were all awesome and will continue to be wonderful. So, see you guys later.
Yeah. So, yeah, the order got all thrown off. Sog, you should probably go, and then I'll take it from there.
Thanks everybody for coming. Hey, I'm Sog. Those of you who do follow my Twitch channel may have noticed that I have not been doing much streaming recently. Anyone here who has children knows that, week to week their life phases can change dramatically, and what your need to do as a parent can change. So I'm still working out how to balance life while being a father and still streaming. But I'm going to be starting up some other things. I want to get back to some of the things that got me into the community at the start, with when I was working on the Lay Spring project, and I feel like when I was streaming all the time, that I wasn't spending as much time being actively involved in communities around games like I prefer to do. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on that, because I can do that in my own time. But I had such a great time and loved the cause so much that the last Saturday of each month I'm gonna plan on streaming, but I'm gonna do a extralife.org charity stream once a month. Not a 24-hour stream, but my streaming is gonna be geared towards raising money for children's hospitals, instead of trying to build it as a career for myself. So thanks for listening to me ramble about changes in my life. I don't see the stream right now, so whoever's next, go.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. So, everybody, of course, I gave you the whole rundown at the beginning of the show of all the different places. The most relevant one, though, that you're probably going to want to be looking at is 10 to noon Pacific time, Saturday, Sunday for Landmark Daily, as well as 1 to 5 p.m. doing content and creations. Of course, if you want to have your build toured and get feedback, I am more than happy to go there. We're already in the swing of things with Ogre stuff, so if you're building Ogre stuff, definitely hit me up and we'll help you get that stuff looking real awesome and functional and structurally sound, because I care about those things. Other than that, the show kind of leads into the Evercast show, and always want to give a shout out to our good friends over there. So that's it for me. Phantom X, why don't you give everybody your spiel here?
I'll just mainly thanks everyone for being here all these episodes, and showing up every Friday. It's sometimes very difficult to talk about something every week when there's so little that comes out, but we try to do our best. And yeah, so thanks for showing up. Hope you'll keep being here every Friday.
That's a great
That's
point.
it.
Oh, Bella already went, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gio, it's on you now.
I'm throwing it.
So it's up to you to close us out, Big Papa.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming by. I'm gonna be live streaming. I'm gonna continue to live stream, I should say, in about 30 minutes or so. But I will be playing League of Legends. So if you guys want to join us, we do viewer games and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I'll see you guys later.
Do we have a temporary raid target in mind, or anybody to go to in the meantime?
That's a great point. Let's check out Twitch. Let's see who's on. Is anyone streaming Landmark? That's a good question.
I'm looking right now. I see Tobes. Tobes is on actually right now. She is
Yay,
not doing Landmark,
Tobes.
but she is doing. Yeah, nobody's doing Landmark, but Tobes is on. So
Spliff Killer's playing something. It doesn't look like Landmark, but it says Landmark on Twitch.
Let's see. I think he's doing a giveaway. Maybe not. All right, so let's go. Let's hit up Tobes. As you guys probably know, Tobes, beautiful young lady who started streaming with Landmark, and I love her, and I think we all do. It's hard to not love Tobes. She's one of those people. So there we go. Thank you, Sog. All right, cool.
All right.
See you guys later.
See you later, everybody.
bye.